Hi, I'm ED-SKaR, and once again, I am stalking Zona. Today I'm going in as the Mystic. I have the model and my painting handle ready, so not only will I play the game as the Mystic, I'll also be painting him along as well. So, let's get started. As I've played this game a couple of times now, I set up pretty quickly and get stuck into my first turn. In the same way, I've painted many models and I get stuck into my first layers. I don't really plan anything out here. I just take some green from my wet palette and some brown, and that'll make a decent drab green for some trousers. Black and dark red for other areas as well. This soon would come back to cause me a little difficulty, and my game start wasn't going any smoother. Even though I started right outside a secret location, there's no way I can open it in the first turn. So I start to move from Misty Hill to the factory and fight the mutant boneless. I struggle but pass the awareness test, but the fight difficulty of this mutant is 4 and I only have a physical skill of 1, so I decide to leave it. Instead I move through the quarry and fight an octopus, which I can and do defeat, earning me an artifact. On the way through I notice a lonely scavenger through my binoculars. A man walks up the hill. It's my friend Misha. We talk, we laugh, we share stories, and in the same way I have turned my situation around with fixing these base coats. Almost always I paint from a darker colour to the lighter colour, base coat with the shadow colour, and then layer up through the mid-tone into the highlights. This time my base coats were light and desaturated already, as I've mixed in all sorts from my wet palette. Painting in shadows should be the same as painting in highlights, just upside down. So I turn the model upside down. I mix a darker shade of green and layer in some shadows on every fold of the trousers. Surprisingly, I think this actually looks pretty good, so I do the same technique on the red shawl. And I'm feeling pretty good about such a basic technique, and I just get stuck into the rest of it. Later on, I meet a smuggler who is terrified and points her weapon at me. I quickly explain that I have no ill intentions, and it turns out she has quite an arsenal in her pack. After she's satisfied that I'm not a bandit, we trade, adding a bar of chocolate with worrying quotation marks to my growing pile of artifacts that I should probably trade out sometime. I've noticed that in this game I've spoken to many people. My old friend, Scavengers the Smuggler. I feel like this character is more interpersonable than my previous games. Then I meet a group of scavengers who capture me and force me to take them through a dangerous area filled with anomalies. Well, I take them into the area, I make a turn, and then another. I pick my timing wisely and scrabble through, hearing the screams as the anomaly disintegrates my captors behind me. It seems I am very interpersonal, but that doesn't mean I'm not capable of looking after myself. To emphasize this, I did a tiny bit of kit bashing to the base of the model, and there's some time travel involved in making this video, as I did this before I started painting. Do excuse that. There are 2 skulls on the base underneath this metal plate. Very subtle and sinister. I want to emphasize this without ruining the subtlety. Well, I happen to have this box of skeletons from way back, and whilst they are smaller size, because they're hero scale, the features are overemphasized and actually fit quite well with the 42mm Zona models. I go around a few options, stacking skulls, having a ribcage and arms. Finally, I decide on just adding 1 arm and a fist from the skeleton to the base. As if those poor scavengers had been buried and were trying to claw their way out. Well, that's all very morbid, so I move on to the government bunker. I find a group of people sitting around a metal table. On the table is a blue crystal. They're all staring at it, completely motionless. I stare at it. As I struggle to break my gaze, I start to hallucinate. The thoughts of the gathered people merge with my own, and I see their memories. I see their fears, and they see me. Startled, they reach for weapons, and I hightail it out of there. But with my way of viewing the world changed forever from being connected with them. In the fighting, my damage track is filled, and I pick up a weakness. After I escape, I draw a rumour card, and this turn, a radioactive dust cloud passes by. When my next turn starts, I suffer 1 radiation damage from it. As my track is full, this would mean I pick up a second weakness, except thankfully, I use my scavenger outfit to negate it. After that, I pass by camp, sell most of the artifacts, and heal. The model has a fireball in his hand. I supposed that this is one of his starting pieces of equipment, however, I never used it. I try to tie in the model to the story I lead, but this time it wasn't involved. I cannot, however, ignore it, not without hacking his hand off and doing some more serious remodeling. This feature of the model is a perfect excuse for some OSL, or Object Source Lighting, which just means that there's a light source inside the model, the flame, rather than painting highlights from an outside source like the sun or ambient light. I've not spent a lot of time doing OSL, in fact I think I've only done it on 1 model before. I know the principles of the technique, so let's at least give it a go. On my way to the botanical lab, I have an encounter with this portal anomaly. Awareness test is easy, but the smarts test requires a total of 3. Not bad, my smarts base is 3, however with the weakness -1 and 2 minuses on the dice, well, yeah, that's not good. My event this turn is a military checkpoint with some vehicles parked up. There's various things that I can try to do, like sneaking on board to travel to another location, but I'm right where I want to be, outside the botanical lab. So instead I choose to steal an item. Randomly drawing nuts and bolts, which is hilarious to me as I'm just kind of secretly dismantling this truck while the driver doesn't notice. Whilst I was underground, I get a rumour that moves an anomaly. The closest is the portal, which moves back into my way. I had planned my timing perfectly, so I would get to the research station bunker in time for the mission and be safe. But the portal sends me elsewhere, to be 1 space away from the roadhouse bunker. Now you're thinking with portals. I'm safe and also closer to the centre. My planning for the OSL was equally disrupted. I started with wet blending the blue and white from the fire into the paints that each surface had used. This didn't look very good, however, but I noticed that the edges of some of these parts, it looked better than the rest. And I realised that these were places where I had over-thinned the consistency of the paint into a glaze. So I set about glazing, and all of the rest of the OSL looked so much better. When learning to paint, knowing a new technique won't make you a better painter, but rather knowing which technique to use to create the effect you're after. Well, we're all closing in on the end. I just need to push around this OSL until I get it just right. In my game, the rumour deck is getting thin. I trade as best I can, but I'm not well equipped. There's not enough time to go rooting around for more gear. Time is short. I must get to the centre. As I'm approaching the power plant, I get this rumour card. Red sky. Blood red clouds coming from the power plant's smokestacks. Ilya! Ilyushka! Friend of mine! The fairy tale is over! Move your ass! Well, I guess that means the skeleton on the base has a name now. After making it to the power plant, I just have to find the source. I draw many sarcophagus event cards, and each turn drawing from the last few rumour cards. When the last one of those goes, it's game over. Every event I fail causes some damage and it all stacks up. It's a race to complete an event successfully before something kills me. A military chopper flies overhead, firing at anything that moves. To avoid it, I roll... Well, it doesn't matter what this roll is for. The result is double Zona. Even the pushed reroll gets Zona again. The zone is done with me. The critical fail gives 1 point of damage. But my damage track is long since filled. All my equipment is broken. I take a 4th weakness, which finishes me off. And I kid you not, I'm having an emission on my ambience track. At exactly this time. And so, my journey is done, the model is painted, and while I wasn't successful, I do love the fact that my ambience track hit an emission right at the end of the game. I had 1 rumour card left, which, if I'd have drawn it, would have triggered the final emission, so I guess that's what that was. I will put a link in the description to that ambience track, as it's something that I like to listen to while playing because I love the Stalker Mythos. If you do pop over there to have a listen, do tell them I sent you. But for the model specifically, I think that the OSL effect sort of worked, but not quite enough. I think I captured the effect, but this is certainly something I need a little more practice on. And also in the description, there's a bunch of links to the other stuff that I get up to, as well as a donation link so that you can throw me a little something to help me keep making these videos. And of course, you can pop past the comment section to have your say about my journey or about the model that I have painted. But with all of that said, I am ED-SKaR, always will be, and thank you very much for watching.